News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Doug Krizner, and we begin in the Middle East. Bloomberg has learned that President Trump vetoed an Israeli plan to kill Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It's unclear if Trump personally delivered the message waving Israel off a possible assassination plan. Now, U.S. officials have been in close touch with Israeli officials ever since they launched a series of missile and drone strikes on Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is defending his country's military actions against Iran. Today, in an interview with Fox News, Netanyahu said Israel will do whatever is necessary to remove the nuclear threat Iran poses.
We had to act. It was the 12th hour. We did act to save ourselves, but also, I think, to not only protect ourselves, but protect the world from this incendiary regime.
That is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to Fox News. Meantime, back and forth strikes between Israel and Iran continued on Sunday. And President Trump told ABC News over the weekend that U.S. involvement in this conflict is, quote, possible. We also heard from Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. He is the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he spoke on Sunday to CBS Face the Nation.
The Iranian regime has been terrorizing Americans. It's killed thousands of Americans. It's taken them hostage. It still chants death to America. And it's building missiles that can strike not just our troops or our friends in the region, but soon enough here in the United States as well.
Republican Senator Tom Cotton there. Now, economists say Israel's attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities risks pushing back the timeline for Fed rate cuts as the central bank waits to assess the potential impact on inflation. More from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Oil is now at the highest in several months as investors price in the risk of significant disruptions to the world market, and that could add to inflation pressures already building as a result of President Trump's tariffs. In a note, Anna Wong and Tom Orlick of Bloomberg Economics estimate a further climb in oil prices to $100 a barrel would boost all grades of gasoline in the U.S. by about 17%, corresponding to a rise to $4.20 a gallon from $3.25, and that would bring the year-over-year inflation rate to 3.2% by June. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
We go to Minnesota next, where a manhunt is underway for Vance Bolter, suspected of killing a Democratic state lawmaker. She is Melissa Hortman, the Democratic leader of the state House, and her husband, both fatally shot at their home on Saturday. Now, at the same time, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, were wounded in an earlier shooting. The suspect left a purported hit list in his car that included several Minnesota politicians and abortion providers in the state. This is according to a government background document seen by Bloomberg News. Here is U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar speaking to ABC's This Week.
As elected officials, we all know there have been increase in threats over the last years. They've gone from like 1,800, this is against members of Congress, in 2016 to over 9,000 last year.
That is U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Now, these shootings have prompted bipartisan condemnation, with President Trump and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz speaking out against the violence. Protesters filled the streets across the U.S. on Saturday to oppose President Trump's policies as he held a military parade in Washington. Now, the anti-Trump activists included labor unions and civil rights groups. They organized the nationwide No Kings protest, denouncing what they say are Trump's authoritarian tendencies. Meantime, in Los Angeles, there were skirmishes between law enforcement and demonstrators in the city's downtown area. In an interview with CNN's State of the Union, L.A. Mayor Karen Bass spoke about the protest and the military presence in her city.
We don't want them here. They don't need to be here. Our local law enforcement have complete control of this situation. And I will tell you, the 30,000 people were downtown L.A. There were protests in 15 different locations in our city. I flew over each one of them, and they were overwhelmingly peaceful. L.A.
Mayor Karen Bass there. Meantime, California is urging a federal appeals court to uphold a lower court ruling that limits President Trump's control over the state's National Guard. Governor Gavin Newsom is challenging the Trump administration's authority to deploy troops in Los Angeles, calling it an overreach that violates the 10th Amendment. And that is news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Doug Krizner, and this is Bloomberg.